Welcome, everybody. I'd like to continue our meeting. We're convening out of executive session, and we're going to move to our next item, which is statements from the audience. And we have Ari.
Hi, my name is Ari Klein. I'm the president of the Cleveland Heights Teachers Union. Board President Posh, board members, Superintendent Dixon, Scott Gaynor, CFO Gaynor, sorry. Thank you for hearing me tonight. I was expecting to come with a very different speech today because we've been hearing a lot from teachers about the condition of the buildings that are not air conditioned, but I'd just like to publicly thank the superintendent with the board's support for making the hard decision to close schools. I know that it's not an easy thing to do, but I think it's the right decision. I don't think there are a lot of learning going on when kids are really uncomfortable and teachers are not able to teach. It's a health concern and a safety concern. So I just wanted to say thank you for making the tough decision. I don't remember another time when Cleveland Heights is closed because of heat, but things are getting that way now. So anyway, that was all.
Yeah.
Thank you, Art.
Yeah, thanks for the kind words. Moving on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I motion that we discuss or accept. I motion that we accept the consent agenda.
We'll discuss after.
Very good.
So, do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any comments? I would like to say that under the business services item, the two items regarding the middle schools, 2 and 3, I'd like to take separately.
I agree.
So we were given this in advance.
So we moved item 5 out of the business agenda.
I still see it in
Yes.
my,
That was the one that you'd asked us to move out.
okay, I
So
still
that's
see
the
it in my
change order.
agenda.
Yeah, so the consent agenda only includes item 3, which is the approval of bus routes, and item 4 for donations. Item
Okay.
5 is a separate action item.
Okay. Are you showing something different than I'm showing? Oh, we have that, but I'm just looking at the resolution. If we're keeping the middle schools off, that's
Right,
good.
yeah.
So there was a number of things that were presented to us in advance. No other questions?
I did have a question. I was curious about what the Peace Lutheran Church donation was going to, Faith's Alive social worker program, because I've not heard about it.
Churches.
I did send an update, Dr. I don't know if that was shared with the board, but that donation is made by actually numerous churches at some time or another to the counselors to help students that need different items, supplies or resources that are unavailable. So it's donations that are taken in and they can use it to buy pens, pencils, whatever that may be needed by that student.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Wright?
Yeah.
Mr. Posh?
Yes.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Serini?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Moving on to business services and the Gilbane presentation. Mr. Scott, it's nice to see you after
A while, yeah.
it's been a while.
Well, thanks for having me back.
Are you up on here, Scott?
At some point. It's a pretty basic presentation.
Right. That's, just trying to make sure it's all.
Did you bring it on? I did. You put it on there? But so we did ask Scott Bindle from Gilbane, and he's brought Mr. Jones to help him in some form or fashion. So I'll let them take it from here.
Thank you, George.
As I said, thanks for having me back. For those that don't remember or never knew, I was the project manager, or still am the project manager for the Cleveland Heights High School project. This is Aaron Jones, also with Gilbane Building Company. He was our lead project engineer out there at the Cleveland Heights High School. So I hope at this point, after a year of school and a summer off and back into it, one of the air-conditioned buildings in the district, I hope the district's happy with it. I know I've not received so many comments, compliments about the project as I did about any project as I did about this one, because so many people drive by the corner of Cedar and Lee and say that school looks great. It looks great. I love to see, because they're all still, everyone that I talk to is still excited at summer barbecues this year about being able to see the open front of the school instead of the old science wing. But I'm not here to talk about how great the building looks from Cedar and Lee. We're here to talk about what's left to do. And before, just as a very brief introduction to the final bits of finishing out the dotting the i's and crossing the t's, the last of the project, I brought Aaron Jones here so he can give you a very quick synopsis of all of the quality control measures to date to get us to the size of the list we have that started as a much larger list a year and a quarter ago. So, Aaron?
All right, so part of what I do as a project engineer with Gilbane is I make sure that the school gets exactly what you bought. And here are a few processes we follow to make sure that happens. So the first delivery inspection is when items first come to the project site, we review the actual material versus specifications to make sure that, it's actually what's supposed to be on site. Samples, we get actual hard samples from our contractors, and those samples are reviewed with the design team and with the owner to make sure that, again, it's what you're supposed to have. Mock-ups, so before we actually construct things, we'll make a smaller scale version of it. We'll do like a masonry mock-up. It'll have a window in it, window flashing, the grout, things like that, to make sure that's that's actually what what was that per the documents, and it's what the architect wants, what the owner wants. Make sure everybody's happy. So once that gets approved, we go ahead with the actual full-scale construction. Benchmarks, so that's in place. So again, say we put up a masonry wall, we'll do a smaller section of it so we don't go crazy with it just yet, and we'll have the design team review it, make sure again the grout color's right, the bricks right, it's the right color, everything like that, and then once we get signed off on that, we keep going. Rolling completion list. So this is before we do actual punches with the design team. We try to catch everything. The contractors are human just like us. Things happen, so we try to catch all that beforehand. So that's our rolling completion list. So we go through, find items that need tuned up a little bit, and we get them tuned up. And then we bring in the design team and the owner, the school district, you guys, with the punch list. And that's when we go through with design team, and they take another set of eyes through it and, see what needs tuned up some more. And then at that point, we're complete. And then that's when the warranty period starts. And as things, the school gets turned over, you guys use the building, things happen. So that's why we have usually a 1-year warranty standard. So that's when that starts.
And the warranty is not about us getting extra work pinned on us. The warranty is about actually making sure that the client is happy, making sure the district is satisfied with the building. We actually require, as part of our company policy, an 11-month walkthrough, which is not uncommon in the industry, but it's a meeting that we make sure happens so that we don't leave Cleveland Heights, University Heights with anything you're not satisfied with. That's the point of the whole warranty process. So we actually instigate the warranty walks to flush out these issues. So we've got the vast majority of them scrubbed off the warranty list at this point, and there's a handful of issues that we're actively working through. We've got plans in place for each of them. There's a few issues we've reviewed with the team a few times with the ball fields. We've got our path going forward there. There's some landscaping as far as some dead tree replacement, warranty work, dead shrub replacement, some pruning work to get the trees and shrubs in better shape. There's a sidewalk crack that is on the west side by the natatorium entrance that was repaired but not well repaired, so it's going to get repaired to the district's satisfaction. We had a meeting on that 2 weeks ago now, I think, and we're scheduling the work to complete. And HVAC, we're past the largest issues with the multi-stack chiller in the basement. Gardner is one of the area's premier mechanical vendors and controls vendors. So you're lucky to have them as part of in this project, because they really stand by a project, stand by the equipment, and they're standing by all the equipment in the high school down the street. They've offered to extend warranties for one of the compressors within that multi-stack units. They've extended warranties because they had issues with one of the compressors. And now the last one is one of the air handlers has one of those elusive sounds that we can't seem to recreate, but we'll stick with it till we do.
Yes, we hear the ceiling tiles are vibrating when it runs.
I've heard it myself, and then you call the subcontractor out to fix it, and you can't reproduce it, much like when you take a car with a rattle to the mechanic, right? So they've been back as recently as the week before last, and we'll get them back here again to keep troubleshooting it.
Now, does the warranty walkthrough is scheduled to take place in November?
No, the warranty, we call it an 11-month walkthrough, so it took place on this job just a hair early in June. Yeah, so because the warranty is expired in August, so the issues that were brought up ahead of that obviously don't just disappear if we delay, right? So we're still, all of our subcontractors are still liable to fix them, responsible to fix them.
What's on your miscellaneous list?
Oh, there's a few issues. There's an area of paint to cut in around the lobby that can't quite even tell where it is until the evening light, which is why it was missed on all the quality control lists. There's a few AV issues, audiovisual issues left that parts are ordered for, but they're not in stock yet, so we are not able to swap out a couple pieces of equipment. Those are the ones.
I'll share the list with you. They've been working on it continuously. You're right, it's down to a handful of items that Doug and I will get it to accuracy and then send it off to you.
Thank you.
I think it should be just noted that we did speak to George earlier today, and George was going to send a refreshed punch list to us, just so we were able to see exactly where we stood. We understand some of the warranties were extended just for some things we weren't too sure about. I heard second or third hand, I think, about some of the trees. There was some talk about trimming some of the trees because you thought that would make some of them healthier. But then we got extended warranties on some of those in case they would die. And, regrettably, some trees do die. I mean, I think you look at all the things in the Beechwood median strip on Fairmont, the dead trees there, it's just not an issue with our project. But it's something we need to keep an eye on, which thankful staff is doing that. So we know that there's a bunch of things that are in the works right now. It sounds like we have your commitment that you're working through everything.
Absolutely, sir, and we wouldn't leave you hanging in the lurch.
And that's what I think we feel comfortable about. But there's still unanswered questions, and it's good that you bring those up, and we need to keep an eye on this, and you obviously are, and certainly our staff is. Do you guys have any thoughts, questions?
I keep getting very positive feedback about the look of the building from the outside, from random people who have not been in yet, and I keep saying, go in, you'll be amazed. So there's no question that people all over the area have noticed the building, and that's good.
Yes.
So the main reason, if I may, we wanted Scott to come in, and we appreciate him coming in and talking about this, because it is past the 11-month walkthrough, and we're still dealing with things, but we wanted to make sure that you were aware that, Gil Bain has committed to making sure that we take care of these things. So if you hear those rumors going around, it's not something that the district is stuck with. There's a team that's still working continuously on all the things that we have to face.
Excellent.
So we appreciate them coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Let's move to the middle school update.
Did you put your middle school one up here?
Hello. I'm here, we have 2 requests for the middle schools for change orders, and then we also have the middle school budget update. The 2 requests that we have tonight are change order 3M for additional compo floor removal for $72,924, and we have 4M for center gym ACM ceiling removal for $675. The additional compo floor, explain a little bit about how we put the project together. We had PSI come in because we knew we had hazardous material in the building.
Can you explain who PSI is?
PSI is our third-party testing agency, so they're experts in doing the testings and dealing with hazardous materials, but they're not a contractor. They're an inspection agency, basically. So they're hired directly by the district to represent, to make sure that all the quality controls and all the legal aspects are being taken care of. So as we put the project together, we had them do extensive testing, and we tried to do our best guess as to how much material we had so that we could put in allowances to try to cover that for the removal. The composition floor, we did a couple different spot checks because we just can't check everywhere. It costs too much money, and at some point you make a judgment call. We were anticipating that it was going to be about a ½ inch thick, and as they started to tear out the composition floor, they found that some areas are up to 2 to 3 inches, and it had to come out, so it was removed. I have some photographs to show. But basically, we have allowances in the GMP to cover the abatement of materials that we anticipated. This was thicker, and it wasn't anticipated. That's why it's a request this evening as a change order. We have some photographs here. I'm sorry they're kind of dark, but you can kind of see on the right-hand side how thick it actually is, 2 to 3 inches thick.
And is this at Monticello or at Roxborough? I think this is at Monticello, correct?
So this is at Monticello, but we had Capo's floor at both, and we had the same contractor, so it's kind of, this time is all lumped together.
Okay.
Here you can here's a better perspective where you can see the center mullion for the door, and then on the right-hand side, you can see the distance of how much had to come out. So with this request, this was basically for the abatement contractor for their extra labor and materials to pull out and abate that additional composition floor. Fortunately, the team right now is trying to figure out the best way to replace that floor. So once we have that solution, then that'll be another request that we'll have to come back and ask for board approval on.
So when you say composition floor, there's asbestos.
Yes,
In
so
this.
basically, there's a slab that's poured, and then this was a leveling topping slab that was poured on top, and when it was done, it had asbestos in it.
So it goes down as some kind of a nasty slurry of whatever was sitting in the bottom of everybody's bucket.
At the time,
And
it
levels
wasn't a
and
nasty
self-levels.
slurry, it was the
Well,
state-of-the-art.
And right, and the problem is what was in those buckets.
Right.
So, tonight we're being asked to approve a significant dollar amount for the compo floor, which is, the work had to be done. It's been done. That's one thing. But this is the prequel to another potentially large. Because digging this out is now known. We have a dollar amount. But now leveling that back, putting whatever's in the bottom of today's bucket
Hopefully no asbestos today.
on the floor and preparing the floor for a finish,
Yes,
you're saying we still don't know what that is going to entail.
right.
Because
We have
you don't-
about 10,000 square feet, but it's some of the areas, it's like a pond, or it's sloped in. And you have lightweight concrete, but that's only good to a certain thickness. And then you have other compounds that are really leveling materials, but they're very expensive. So the team right now is trying to work the best way so that they can come up with a solution where they could come in and they could just put in a gypcrete or some leveling compound, but we don't really want to do that because it's inappropriate to put that material at the cost 3 inches thick. So we're still trying to work out the best solution for that.
And it may be different products in different spaces, I'm assuming, depending upon
Possibly,
what those spaces are.
possibly, yes.
So just looking at, jumping ahead a little bit, but in your estimates, we have two estimates, one for 30,000 and one for 75,000. And those are just estimated sort of plug-in values of what you're ballparking, thinking with those replace, to redo the floor with the newer technology, whether it's thin set or thicker
Right.
material or whatever it is.
Right.
It's about $100,000, 105.
I think that's the most, based on the 10,000 square feet, that's the most recent estimates we're starting to get from Turner.
And that's still fitting well within our contingency, because we do have a contingency for these kinds of things.
Right. But what we're going to start to see is a lot of this happen at Monticello. So as we balanced both of the schools and we threw the same contingency value at both schools, some of the hazardous materials and some of the costs that are going to Monticello are kind of tipping the tides a little bit. So at some point, we'll probably ask to just balance that out a little bit. If we look at Monticello right now, I would be concerned about the contingency that we spent with the duration. But if we combine both Monticello and Roxborough, we're still comfortable with where we're at.
Okay, so let me just rephrase what I'm pretty sure you just said. We have a contingency from Monticello, we have a contingency for Roxborough, but if you lump them together, we're still okay. But if you're looking just at the contingency for Monticello, you're starting to get a little bit worried.
Yes.
But we really I think we're really looking at this thing from the entire,
One bond.
one bucket as opposed to.
We
So,
just manage it in smaller buckets so
well,
we can
and
control it a
that's,
little more.
I think that's prudent. I just want to make sure I didn't hear I hope I didn't hear. So you've gone through a demolition process at Roxborough as well. There's a lot of similarities between the two buildings. Have you uncovered anything like this at Roxborough? And have you already uncovered if it's already there? And are there other anticipated costs to do this same sort of thing at Roxborough?
Would you like to come up and address that? I believe all of the flooring abatement has been taken care of, but Jack from Turner can go ahead and address that.
The compo flooring at Roxborough typically was not asbestos containing, and there was a smaller quantity of it as well. So the magnitude of the issue is much smaller at Roxborough.
We don't have to worry about that.
So that means both the abatement and the new leveling will be much significantly less for Rox than for
Right.
Monty? Okay.
Do you have anything else to share regarding this
Not for this change order request.
and this agenda item?
And
There's
then
another-
we have,
there's-
for the change order 4M, this is for the center gym ACM ceiling removal.
Okay,
As the topping slab was removed, there were areas with cracks. Turner brought it to the attention of Moody Nolan and Osborne, so they brought their structural engineer out, and they've noticed that some of the cracks need to be addressed. So as we've taken a closer look at it, the way to repair the cracks is actually you need to do that from below. So we're going to need to remove the ceiling in the gym so that we can expose all the conditions. The ceiling is acoustic, is a ACM. It has asbestos in the plaster ceiling. That has to come out, and then the pipes have asbestos insulation. So this change order request is for the cost for scaffolding and for the abatement contractor to come in to remove the ceiling and to abate the area. We have some plans that the structural engineer is putting together, but again, until we can see all of the locations, then we can actually finalize exactly what the repairs are going to be, and then that'll be another request to come in and to make the actual structural repairs. This plan shows the locations of the two rooms, a choir room and a science classroom that are located over the gym. And then I've put in red where you can kind of see what the cracks are, and we have some photographs just for reference. But basically, when the crack is large enough where it separates the concrete, then the concrete it causes a cantilever condition, which isn't safe. It wasn't designed that way, so it needs to be repaired.
And there are some fairly significant holes, too, where the cracks have crumbled
Yes.
on their edges.
Yes. So there's probably going to be about 3 or 4 different conditions that'll be unique to, whether it's a hole, whether it's a large crack or a small crack. Unfortunately, the crack to the right is right over millwork that was going to remain. So once we can expose that and we can see what the extent is, we might have to address and we might have to remove that millwork and then replace it, if we can't make that structural repair with the millwork in place. But again, we're doing this at a step at a time so that we're not doing more than we need to. This also shows where there was an access hatch, and then the area on the right has a smaller crack. And then this area here you can see is a larger crack. The slide F needs to be rotated. That's in the choir. I don't think that that's an area of concern. But when we looked at it, we discussed whether the whole ceiling has to come out, really what the options are. But about 50% of the area over the gym is really affected by this. So it's best to take the ceiling out. As we're looking at replacing it, we have lighting, we have mechanical that's already in the base bed. We'll probably be looking at painting the ceiling and doing some acoustical treatments rather than putting in a whole new ceiling, so we can try to save some costs there. Oh, and then the final is, sorry, my slides come out so dark on this projector.
Well, you're showing them in a room full of light. How are you expecting this to affect timeline for the building?
We'd like to get this approved, and I think the abatement contractor is able to do this work. And when we talked last week, it was going to be about 2 weeks worth of work that they're going to get it exposed. We've already met with the structural engineer. They already have sketches on what the design solution will be for fixing the cracks. So then we'll be able to tie that back into the schedule.
Those sketches are based on what they think they will find.
Exactly.
Once they open the Pandora's box that will be that ceiling.
Well, they've seen some of the structure, Doug. I mean,
Yeah.
there is some access panels in the one stairwell where they can actually open up and see in there. And so they're designing it based on what they can actually put their eyes on.
Okay.
Now, when they actually see the hole, they'll come up with a permanent fix.
So when I went poking around with Tyrone Williams, is that his last name?
Yes.
Last week, he mentioned that there were 3 potential solutions depending on what they were likely to find after removing the ceiling underneath the floor. Every place that he and I looked, the beams under the floor looked pretty good. Those are poured concrete beams.
Right.
But of course, you never know until you look at all of them. My question is really silly. It's the scaffolding contract says 28 days of scaffolding, and if there's only 2 weeks' worth of work, why are we keeping the scaffolding up twice as long?
Well, I could let Jack answer that, but it's not a silly question.
Typically, when you rent scaffolding, the biggest cost is the erection and then the dismantle.
Yeah.
And the rental is really pretty minor, so we intentionally bought a month worth of scaffolding so that once the abatement is done, which we think will take about 2 weeks, the other trades can get up in there, and there's some mechanical and other work that'll have to happen, so we're going to take advantage of using the scaffold for, lighting and mechanical and things like that.
So they can pull the condemned pipes or whatever else there is.
Move any pipes, do the repairs if we need to. I mean, the 4-week rental may not be enough if we have really extensive cracks, if the repairs are bad. So we kind of took a median and said, well, let's get a month worth of scaffold.
Sure. Now, best case scenario, there's nothing structural wrong under that concrete floor. It's just that the floor was garbage, and then you'd have to reform it and pour a new floor, right? Or individually fill those cracks and,
Well,
form
the
it from
structural
below.
engineer's details showed some new joists going crossways to the existing members.
Oh,
So we
okay.
would have to do those at some of the holes. If that was the worst of it, then we would do that and then just pour a new topping on top of the structural slab.
Okay, and then worst case scenario, we don't want to think about.
Yeah.
Because you don't know yet.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Do we have any choice? I mean,
This-
what is the
We
option?
challenged, when we saw this, we challenged the structural engineer. We met the structural engineer out there, and as you see it, and as he explains, the it needs to be taken care of. It's a safety concern that I don't think our structural engineer would sign off on us not accepting.
Very good.
So
Thank you.
once
Sorry.
this is demoed and done, then you're going to come back to us to finish it.
Yes,
Correct.
So there'll be another amount. We don't know what it is yet.
that's correct.
And that depends on what they find after they pull the ceiling out.
And
We
when
have
will
some
that happen?
estimates.
How soon?
2 weeks.
But that'll probably be 3 or 4 weeks before we have the solution and before we have it priced out.
Okay.
Okay, so I know we have a resolution to deal with this, but since you're sort of giving us an update, I mean, we're still on time. We're getting, I think, good pictures,
Yes,
which is very helpful. The Bond Accountability Commission is meeting tomorrow night, and you'll be disclosing all this with them. I'd be curious to see what they have to say. Just as far as process goes, I mean, we are, digging into the contingency. We need to be, we're all aware of that, okay? I just sort of want to get a little bit of feedback from that. Is there anything, and you just met with us 2 weeks ago
yes.
for another set of change orders that are still, documented, and we knew that they were coming because you're really providing good reporting to us. So thank you for that. So without going into the resolution for this particular item, do we have any other things regarding an update that you guys need to know about or want to know about, or?
We do have an update that Jack from Turner can actually give for the overall, just a lot of the things that you mentioned for the project, and then I just have the final summary of costs, but you have those.
Go for it.
Okay. So as we mentioned, every time we're going to see this slide, because this is what our target is, both Roxborough and middle school, where we're managing with the hard cost contingencies and the soft cost contingencies for those schools. So as we update these items, we have the 2 requests tonight, but basically the summary where we are with Monticello as it stands, with what we have for forecasted and the pending and the approved change orders, we still have over $470,000 of contingencies left. With Roxborough, we have $942,000 of contingencies left. So as I mentioned before, when you combine those together, it looks a little better than if you only look at Monticello. One of the other items that, with the soft costs, with all of the hazardous material that we've run into, we do need to keep PSI on so that when the abatement contractor does the work, they have to call for a final clearing and do tests and everything else. So we're working with them now for another amendment to their contract. So I've added that as pending for $32,000. So of our soft costs, we still have $37,595 left with our soft costs as those targets that we're managing. I'd be happy to answer any of the questions you might have.
And there will be soft costs associated with whatever decision is made for these cracks, because there will have to be plans drawn and.
Well, that's going to be kind of within Moody, Nolan, and Osborne.
Okay.
If we have additional testing services and stuff like that, that's kind of why I had targeted that we have maybe 32,000 more with PSI.
So do we realistically think we're going to be able to do some of the things that we wanted to do, like renovating the kitchen, moving the walk-in freezer? Or are we getting in danger of some of those are going to be going away?
The kitchen itself is actually going to be discussed. We have the numbers for that. We're presenting that to the BAC tomorrow night.
Okay, good.
And based on those discussions, we hope to bring that to you at the next board meeting, the work session. But those dollars for the kitchen would come out of permanent improvement, just a heads up. We don't plan
So
on
it's a
taking
different
those out of the
budget.
project.
Okay.
Do you have it?
So Jack, while you're getting prepared, I had the opportunity to walk through Van Aken,
Okay,
and you guys have done a phenomenal job there.
thank you.
Looking forward to the same look and feel in our buildings.
Good. Glad you liked it. All right, so this is just really a summary level of where we are on the schools, Monticello and Roxborough. Monticello, we still are on schedule for July 3rd, 2019, substantial completion, no changes there. Work in progress is, we've started the plaster wall patching, the BAC, some of the members of BAC came out and toured the existing conditions, and we showed, 3 different methods to patch the walls, and based on their selection, we proceeded with that. We've got about 17 rooms nearly completed with the patching, mostly second floor. We also did a mock-up on the exterior grill infill. This is where the old unit ventilators penetrated through the brick, and Jaquil from Moody Nolan and some of his team reviewed the mock-up and suggested some changes, so we are working through that. So that was a good process we went through to make sure we have a good design that everybody's comfortable with. As far as work in progress, we're still doing some selective demolition through, example, the corridor walls. Now that we know the duct size and where the duct's going, now we're doing the real specific hand demolition for some of the MEP work. And we've also started the installation of duct piping and electrical at Monticello. And the photos here, upper left is right here, that's new duct running down the hallway. And then here's new heating, water supply and return piping. This is a picture of a frame that used to support a rooftop unit. The rooftop unit has now been removed in preparation for installing the new unit. This is a picture of 3 electrical panels that are installed with the trough over them, and you can see the conduits coming out of them, so that's a good sign when you have the tubs installed. And then here at Monticello, this is just a picture of some of the piping that has been fabricated off-site and is shipped to the site ready for installation. So that's Monticello. As far as where we are with bulletins, 1 through 4 are approved. We just talked about compo floor and ceiling removal. Bulletin 5M is the new walls at the old cafeteria area, which I think is going to come to you next meeting, so I was a little early with that one. But bulletins and pricing, you can see we've got a lot of bulletins we're working through. 6, 7, and 8 are all related to the kitchen. 9 is the cupola painting. 10 is hardware changes. 11 is signage. 12 is tack boards and gates. And then we're also working on compo floor replacement, which is the flip side of the removal. Roofing, we're going to meet with a roofer and talk about making repairs in certain areas in lieu of some of the work that's shown on the drawings that we probably don't need, so that could be cost neutral there. Room 221 is the floor cracks. That again is associated with the ceiling removal that we already discussed. Topping out walls, this is where the existing walls didn't extend to the deck above, so we've been working with Moody Nolan and a bunch of subcontractors to figure out the extent of that patching work, and then there's a pending change on the interactive monitors.
Is the hardware the door hardware, interior doors?
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
the stair doors, basically.
Mhm.
And then,
Hey, Doug, the numbers in your spreadsheet for the updated, I mean, you forecasted some pricing. And when the bullet, I mean, is this in advance of what you're going to share us? So for example, we see signage, estimated signage cost, estimated cupola costs. Are those still estimates
I
or?
update those as we get pricing from Turner. So
Okay.
those were the initial kind of order of magnitude guess that I kind of threw together. And then as we define it more and as they have more information and they start putting together the numbers, we update those.
Okay.
okay, Roxborough, same, on schedule for July 3rd. We're still working on the selective demolition. We started the MEP rough-in, and the electrical service pole was installed a couple Saturdays ago. Here's some photos. Here's another photo of a lot of electrical conduit, some more electrical conduit.
And
You can't really tell, but that's a really cool picture of some really
That's a
great
lot of bending
workmanship.
conduit.
Yeah, electrical, and then there's the pole. So I don't know why we only got electrical this month for Roxborough, but we've done other work there, so that's what maybe the most photogenic work. And then as far as changes, bulletins 1 through 3 have been approved. We are, I think this will go to you next month, a refeed of some existing panels that fed the kitchen, that fed through the attic. Nobody really expected that, so there was a charge for that. And then the bulletins and pricing, similar to Monticello, is cupola, hardware, signage, tack boards. AT&T service pathway, there had to be a new route for the service coming in from AT&T, so there's a bulletin issued for that. Cafeteria ceiling, the existing conditions were a little bit different than what we expected, so Moody Nolan presented a couple options to Doug and George, and they picked, surprisingly, the most economical solution, which was great. But there's an alternate for a little bling. And then attic heat detectors, we need to put heat detectors in the attic. So these are all bulletins that we're working on, and then we have a couple pending bulletins similar to Monticello. That's it.
Are there any of the exterior units or interior HVAC units at Roxborough that have penetrated the brick that need to be filled in? You had some on your list for Monticello.
Try the question again, I didn't understand that.
Can you go back to your first part of your Monticello presentation? Use the same. Keep on going.
Here?
No, keep on going.
Exterior drop.
Talking about the classroom.
The exterior,
Univents?
the mock-up for exterior
Oh,
grill
okay.
infill.
So we have a similar condition at Roxborough, and we did the mock-up at Monticello only, even though it's pretty similar because we wanted to work out the details, and based on what we found at Monticello, we're going to do similar at Roxborough. Does that answer your question?
It does. So prior boards have made decisions to put ugly windows in some of these buildings years back. Many of them have been replaced. Thank you. But what are these grills going to look like?
Well, the typical opening has an existing screen or grill in front of it, and then basically a void where the duct goes into the unit. So what we're doing is we're building taking the grill off, building a wood frame, insulating it, and then putting a dark brown or black metal panel that'll kind of obscure it, and then we're reinstalling the grill, or if you don't have the grills, we're putting new screens.
So it'll look like the grills that are there right now.
But there will
It's
no
not like
longer
you're
be a
gonna be
hole
putting,
to the
like-
outside world.
Yeah, you're not going to put gray vinyl siding on it. That's what I'm trying to, get a sense. You're not going to do.
No, the existing grills are going to come off. Like Jack says, we're going to infill it with insulation, metal panel, and then the existing grill is going back on. And if the grill has been damaged and or is missing, there's going to be a replacement grill.
So it'll look the same.
Yes, most of the cases, it'll look exactly as it does now because it's the same grill.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Do you guys have any questions for Woody Nolan or for Jack?
They gotta approve the change orders.
Yeah, okay, can I have a motion to accept the Monticello change orders?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? You call the roll?
Mr. Posh?
Yes.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Serini?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Bright?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So in the consent agenda, we approved all the items in the finance part of the agenda, but we did not talk about the capital conference delegate.
Right.
That's correct.
So let's move on to that real quickly. So this is basically where one of us who attends Capitol Conference gets to vote on the legislative criteria that our association, the House School Board Association, is going to be working on for the coming year. Normally, the president takes on that role. And then there is a alternate in case the primary person can't go to the meeting. So who's going to Capitol Conference?
I am.
I am.
I am not. I'm
Any-
traveling for work.
I think you had
I'm
a,
gonna try to attend.
you're going to try to go?
Yes.
And you will be there, obviously.
I am hopeful.
Uh-oh.
There was a time I was signed up to go and I wasn't able to go because of a family emergency, but
Yeah.
I plan on going. It's worthwhile. We get a lot of value out of it. So there's 4 of us planning on going. I would like to be the delegate if you guys are okay with that.
Yes.
Fine.
Is there anybody that would like to be the alternate?
I
Not
would be
particularly.
willing.
Go
Well-
for it, Dan.
I'm almost thinking someone who's actually been there before, I think, can provide a lot of value.
Very good.
And I think
Sure.
that would be okay. if
That'll
we-
be fine.
I would be
Beverly
more
would.
willing for Beverly to do it.
Yes.
Yeah, I would, yeah, 'cause I think that provides I think that's great. I'd love to see that. Okay, so we have our answers.
Got it.
So we're now moving on to the superintendent's report.
Okay, so we're going to first start with a presentation by Reaching Heights and followed by a presentation by the Heights School Foundation.
So, hello, I'm Christa Hawthorne, Director of Reaching Heights, and I'm happy to be here with you. And I'm just going to review who we are, what we do, and what our plans are for this year, for 2018-19. Many of you in this room probably know about Reaching Heights, and I'm hoping that maybe there's something interesting and new here for you. But our mission is to mobilize community resources to foster highly valued public schools that provide all Cleveland Heights, University Heights students a successful education. And really what I usually say is that Reaching Heights connects the community to our public schools so that they value public education and are aware of the efforts and accomplishments of our students and our school staffs. But the reason why we do what we do is because educated communities are healthier, happier, safer, and more successful. And also because the community has invested heavily in our situation, heavily with our property taxes, to build and operate our schools. And so the community, we need to be aware of and understand our school district and what's happening in our school district to be able to appreciate and value our public schools. So next year in December, Reaching Heights will celebrate its 30th year.
Yay.
30 years. So it's interesting. I want you to understand that even though we've been around for 30 years, not a week goes by that I don't reach my hand out to introduce myself. And I ask people, do you know about Reaching Heights? And they say, no, never heard of it. So it's interesting. Even though we're not a huge geography and we've been around a long time, we're introducing ourselves to people all the time. So we are 4 part-time paid staff and a very strong and enthusiastic volunteer board of directors. So right now we are 19 board members. And we also have staff for our music camp, summer music camp, about 20 paid staff, and 23 camp volunteers, which includes 19 or 20 high school students who volunteer as camp counselors. And then we have a lot of community volunteers. It's very hard to put a specific number on the community volunteers for a couple reasons. Partly because we can't take credit for all of the community volunteers that assist in our schools. And the number varies from year to year, but they include tutors, classroom speakers, parent support reps, event supporters, and every new year brings another reason to invite someone to help us do our work. Okay, so many of you might not know how we're funded, so I thought I'd put this in here very briefly. But Reaching Heights has an annual budget of about $135,000 a year, except on Reaching Musical Heights years. So every 4th year, it boosts to about $165,000. And our budget is about 50% grant funded, 25% is event funded, so fall fundraiser, spelling bee, Reaching Musical Heights, and then 25% individual donors and family funds. So we count on our community supporting our efforts. And we hope that, the way I think of it is, there are a lot of organizations that I would love to be able to volunteer for. But, we all run out of time. But sometimes I can give financially for the things that I care about that I don't have the time to do. So the community who might be watching this or who's in this room, if you're ever in that situation and think, I wish somebody would represent the community at the Board of Education meetings, that would be us. That would be Reaching Heights. And we have a board member here, Dee Dee Woolens here, who's also on our board. And we have board members who adopt a school and have signed up to attend Board of Education meetings. And we spread ourselves out, just like the Board of Education does, to be able to be present and meet the community and learn about the school district for the community so that we can be trusted sources of information to the community about our schools. So the way I imagine it is like the school district and the communications department has a big megaphone. They have access to resources, they have talented people who can really reach out and spread the word about what's happening in our school buildings. So our administrators inform our communications department, who then broadcasts a message that goes out to everyone, right? It goes out to our staff, it goes out to our families and students, and it goes out to the community. And then imagine the next layer also has megaphones, but not quite so big, which would be our Board of Education. So I have to make sure that the community notices that you are out and about like never before, and we really appreciate that. And that you are giving and taking information from the people that you meet, and also showing up at tons of events in our school buildings and in our community. And then we also have our PTAs that have their own megaphones, but imagine they're like twirling in a circle in their local community around their schools, and primarily with the families and students who are in their school community, which is exactly what they should be doing and what they have the capacity to do. And then we have Reaching Heights, which has, 3.5 part-time paid people, about, 18 to 20 board members who are also going out to be those broadcasters of the information that comes from the school district. And I think that's so important because word of mouth is critical for influencing people's decisions. But the people who are spreading the news need to be well informed. So it's important to have accurate information, and the community has noticed the increase in transparency of information from the district. And then we can spread that information far and wide and be those trusted sources to the people in our own spheres who know us. Okay, so what do? We bring the community into our buildings, partly to make sure they learn about what's happening in our buildings, but also so that they can share their resources with our students and support our staff. So there's always those 3 levels of purpose: that we connect the community, and that we support teachers and our students. So it's support teachers and rich students. So we bring in role model speakers to classrooms, mostly 5th grade classrooms, but sometimes it's 4th and 5th grade classrooms. You might recognize some of those people in those pictures. That's Kelly Robinson, who is the SID director for Cedar Lee, and Jacques Smith, right, is the other one right there. And I think actually the picture with the kids raising their hands was Tommy Fellow when he gave a presentation. We have Many Villages tutoring, which we did not start. It started at Roxelle, and I think we're going back maybe 20 years now. Kim Conklin, were you around, Jim, when that started? But, and Many Villages tutoring has evolved and presents itself in different ways in each of our school buildings, but is still going strong. And we are looking at possibilities of refining the Many Villages program to include a reading chair in every media center, so that community members who can't commit to tutoring for a 6 to 8 week session might be able to sign up for a half-hour reading time where they are read to, or read with, or read to a student who might be sitting next to them. And we actually have a donated rocking chair that will become a reading chair. We're looking forward to finding like little rocking chairs to put next to the big rocking chairs. We thought that would be a hoot. And then we also have community care team meetings. And community care team meetings are building-specific meetings where we bring in the community partners who are already enriching that school so that they get to know each other and can work on the synergy that might be available so that there's not duplication of effort and maybe there's really a growth in whatever could be done to enrich that school from those particular community partners. And we see that kind of as a microcosm of what's coming in the community and schools partnerships. So this is just building specific. We also do quite a bit of communication. So the community care team meetings led to a full district kind of community care team meeting where we brought in representatives from lots of different organizations to talk about how could we improve the communication from the school district down to all of the organizations that exist in our community. And we are one active community. We have a ton of people doing a ton of things, all the way down to book clubs or jazzercise clubs or you name it. We've got little groups of people who talk a lot about our schools. And what I care very much about is that they get accurate information to talk about. So that's where we feel like we can be influential if we can educate enough community members and they're sharing accurate information, and then we can invite them into our buildings. We then have a much stronger chance of making sure that they feel supportive and value our public schools. So another thing that Reaching Heights does is ECAG, and we have the parent mentor on our staff, and she's fabulous. Amy Kerr-Young is a very energetic, sensitive, caring, generous human being. And she is only one person working part-time, but she manages to meet with over 100 families in a year and goes to IEP meetings as what she calls as a professional friend to the parents of students with special education needs. So the ECAG is a group that is a support and advocacy group for the parents of students with special education needs, and they meet monthly, and they do fun activities together, but basically they really work together on how to improve the journey for families who are trying to navigate special education in our system. And they have come up with some great ideas that have been implemented, like including more information on our district website for special needs families, including more information at curriculum nights that is specific to families with students with special education needs. And then she is our district guru in some ways with outside resources for families who may not have any access to any other resources beyond what we can provide in our school district. So that's another big piece of Reaching Heights. And then we have events. If people do know us, they know us from our events usually. And the Community Spelling Bee is really a fun one. And this will be our 28th Spelling Bee coming up in it'll be May 1st this year. It's been a long time since
Later in the
it
season.
is.
than
Well, that's
the
because
past
we'll still
couple
be
ones.
recovering from Reaching Musical Heights, so.
Yes, you need time
So
to
we'll
recover.
need time to get excited again about the Spelling Bee, and
First, you said?
May 1st.
7
And we
o'clock
really
at
hope
night.
that all of you can help us fill the auditorium, because people dress up in great costumes and they sing the spelling of their word to get a pass on a misspelling, and it's not to be missed. In fact, Michael Brennan, the mayor of University Heights, was a first-time speller last year, and boy, can he sing. And they needed to sing for that word, yeah. And Karen's here. There's Karen right up there. Karen Riga's right here. She's a regular at the Bee.
I think Bob was the judge. Was that
Oh, yeah,
in
Bob
that
was a
picture?
judge, and yeah. Nancy Levin, yeah. Okay, and then music and the arts is a big part of Reaching Heights, and we really hope that we can add more arts beyond music, but we have added vocal music as well as instrumental music. So we have Summer Music Camp, which just celebrated 15 years, and There is vocal and instrumental music at summer music camp, and that's for middle schoolers. And then we have Patty Jackson Music Lesson Scholarships, which is $10 for up to 24 lessons. So it's a partnership between the parents and Reaching Heights to make sure that students who are really interested in music lessons have access to them, and so that we can ensure that our high school musicians all have had access to private music lessons. And last year was the first year we added vocal music lessons to high school students only. We were told that's most appropriate, not middle school, but high school for vocal. So the idea here too is that music is not an extra. It is another form of education. There's decoding, there's patterns, there's teamwork, there's problem solving, there's a lot of practice and rehearsal and drafts that have to happen before you get to a performance. We don't see it as separate from the pure academics of education for our kids. Includes music and the arts as an essential part. And then we have Reaching Musical Heights. As far as I'm aware, we are the only district that holds a concert at Severance Hall that includes students from every level, elementary, middle, and high school, vocal and instrumental music. And it's not to be missed. So March 5th, put it in your calendar. And that will be occupying all of my waking moments from now until it's over. Okay, and then the themes for 2018-19 are really interesting. As a board, we came up with these themes, and we are, you might notice it's not very detailed, this plan, because each of these depends on how we can implement them in each of the schools. And our schools have very strong leaders who have their own goals and plans, and we will work with them to determine how these themes will be interpreted in each of our buildings. So the first is Tiger 2, and what you see is a pin we're going to make. It's going to be a 2-inch pin that we're going to distribute at the homecoming parade that says, "I'm Heights Tiger 2." And the idea there is that we think there are some people who feel like if they don't have a child in our schools, or they aren't an alumni of our schools, maybe they're not a Heights Tiger. And we felt like we need to be very explicit and say to them, yes, you are. If you live here and you pay taxes, you're a Heights Tiger. If you own a business here and pay taxes, an employee of a business here, you're a Tiger too. If you have a child or a grandchild, or you're an aunt and uncle of a child in our school districts, you're a Heights Tiger. And we want you to attend our football games and to come to the homecoming parade and to be involved as much as you would like. Come to the concerts, come to Reaching Musical Heights, call our buildings and ask for a tour. You are an investor in our school district, and you deserve equal treatment as a Heights Tiger, and we want you to join us. So that's a theme, that's a message. We can't do this alone, so we'll be looking to our PTAs, to our communications department, to our alumni, to our community members to really spread that word and make sure people feel like they're Tigers too. The second one is Proud and Grateful Tigers. And that has to do with the idea of changing the narrative about our schools. And what we know really works is when you hear a very personal story about what happened to one child or what one teacher experienced. So we're looking forward to finding ways for people to share with us the stories about what they're proud of and what they're grateful for. And then sharing those out to the greater community so that they can then say, I don't only know what my neighbor told me, I heard about this experience and that one, and they have a repertoire of 10 or 12 stories they can share instead of just the one, maybe negative story that they heard. The other part of that is that young people often, part of being young is that you don't really understand how the world works. So you might know what you have, but you don't know how you have what you have. Like, how is it that I'm in this big, beautiful new Heights High School. How did I get so lucky? Well, there's a big story behind that, and maybe if you understood that story, you would have a better appreciation of how life works and how you got there, and maybe some gratitude for that. So that idea of asking students to explain to us what they're proud of and maybe how that happened and who they might want to be grateful to or share their gratitude for. So we're hoping we're going to work with schools and PTAs around Thanksgiving time. Seems appropriate. And we'll see different ways that we can explore that theme. And then, of course, because Reaching Musical Heights is coming up, music is powerful. And music is so powerful. And I really wish one of the things that our state report card measured was how many students are involved in creative activities in their school districts. I think we would do pretty well, but I also think it could be a challenge for us too, to increase the number of students who are in vocal music, instrumental music, in the visual arts. What if we had dance? Wouldn't that be great? But music is powerful, and we really want to make sure that, especially this year, people sense that, feel that, and understand that in more than just music is entertainment. So when people say to me, I've never heard of Reaching Heights, I usually think to myself, well, maybe that's okay, because my goal is not that people know Reaching Heights, but that they know our school district. So then we go on to talk about, where do you live? And what school's near you? And do you know anyone who goes to that school? And that's okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions?
You brought your sign.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that. So our PTAs are selling these signs. And it's a fundraiser for them. And they cost $10 each. So please contact the PTA leader. You can go to CHUH.org and go to families, find PTA, and your contact person will be there. And I would love to see these signs everywhere, but what would be even better for me is if I saw a sign of an independent school or a parochial school right next to this sign, because that would show me a real understanding that we all value public education, but we maybe need to have a different choice for our particular child. Or maybe we have no children, but we understand the value of public education. So it's more than just a little yard sign. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christa.
Thank you.
Do any of you have
Power's
any
not.
questions for Christa?
Just one comment for Christa. Christa, when you get a chance, ask Pamela Cameron, who's on the City Council of University Heights, to tell you the story about her son and music, which she just told us last
Oh, it's a
week.
great story.
Oh, good, I will. I know Pam. Yeah.
And
Proud and Grateful Tigers, there you go.
Yes.
That was really the point of her story.
It was.
That's great.
these signs reminds me some conversations that we've had, and probably the community as a whole has had, about the Home of a New Heights Tiger signs that have been showing up in front of houses. And so were you going to talk about that in your superintendent's report?
But you, go ahead.
No, I'm looking forward to hearing your
Oh, okay.
story. I just wanted to, because, boy, those are great.
They are.
Well, should we just continue and then you'll bring that up?
Yes.
Yeah, and just one more comment for Christa, and I want to thank you for everything that you do and for the musical programs. They are fabulous.
Yeah.
And this year, we invited our neighbor, because you told us, bring a friend, and our neighbor walked away and couldn't believe the quality of the summer music camp program. And I would encourage, if you haven't been to one of those, go. The concert will blow you away. It is amazing.
And you can find the concert on YouTube.
Yes?
If you just Google Reaching Heights Summer Music Camp 2018, you'll get the full concert. And yeah, it's remarkable. Don't forget, these are 5th to 8th graders who are producing that sound.
In 1 week.
Yeah, in 1 week, right.
Yeah, I've gone back and watched several of them because I go to the one and it's fabulous, and then I have to go back and watch several others.
In fact, the last Reaching Musical Heights concert at Severance Hall is also on YouTube.
Yes.
So you can
Yeah.
hear that too and see our students on that fabulous stage.
Excellent, thank you.
So I have
Okay.
one comment, and it's about how you're at all our board meetings. And I think that's important. We have a great cadre of folks in this room that come to our meetings. The League of Women Voters, Reaching Heights, the Teachers Union, and some individuals like Alan, thank you. It's good to get people coming and showing up and providing us feedback on some of the things that happen in this room. So thank you.
Okay, so the next item is the Heights School Foundation Memo of Understanding. So did you have in your packets? And we'll like the board to approve that memorandum of understanding between the Heights School Foundation and the district. So we have, if you have any questions, we have representatives here to speak to it.
So last week, I was down in Columbus, 2 weeks ago, I forget, at a workshop on finance and public education, and there was quite a bit of talk about the structures for boosters and fundraising and making sure that everything is all kept nice and clean and legal. And I'm going to work on the assumption that this agreement makes us all nice and clean and legal in the eyes of Ohio, right?
That is correct. And
Thank you.
Yes, we did have legal counsel review that
Great.
document as well, so, and
Not that
provided
we weren't
feedback.
before.
No, but it's just that there are school districts who are going to be in a lot of trouble, and it won't be us, that's all. Right.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, okay,
That's a
so,
good question.
yeah, so, I mean, before your tenure on the board, we had a different organization essentially being our liaison to the Alumni Association. And there was concerns with conflict of interest. I mean, specifically, we had a board member that was actually running the foundation. I mean, it was all up on the up and up, but there was concern that we really needed to legitimize this organization, which is what we've done.
Great.
And that was done a year or two prior. And Juliana has stepped up as our executive director. You brought your president here. I mean, I think you should stand up and you should
Yes.
and do a
Susan,
quick
yeah,
introduction. and-
Dr. Carver.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, and I have to add to that when they're coming up. And I said it before, leadership matters. And when we started this journey, I know you recall, it was a test. And we said, we're going to test this out to see if it works, and hired her on as a consultant. And for 2 years, and then we said in year 3, we would come and see if it works. Then we will come before the board and say, let's enter an agreement about this partnership. And I think after the first year, in the second year, and Juliana said, we are so on track. This is so the right thing to do. So I appreciate the board's commitment, but we knew that what we had, we could have had so much more. And the impact that the organization has had on the district and the community, I think you can see the fruits of your labor. And the partnership with the district was definitely the right thing to do. So leadership matters, vision matters, and I think you both bring that to this partnership. And thank you for organizing the things the way you have, and to be able to come to the board to get approval. So I hope you will be
Great,
able
thank
to
you.
approve what they have presented to us tonight.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dixon. I'm Juliana Johnson Centuria, the Executive Director of the Heights Schools Foundation. We're just getting started, but thank you for your kind words. I have with me, speaking of leadership, my board president, Dr. Susan Carver.
Class of 78.
From the great class of 1978. How could I skip that?
That's right.
Who has just been a partner in every way, and could not do it without you. Thank you so much for being here tonight. This is a really exciting moment for us to get to this point. We've been talking about it for so long, and Our board is, from the Heights Schools Foundation, is set to review this same document on Thursday night, assuming everything goes well here. So it's just very exciting to document the relationship, and it's just one more step in solidifying the future of the foundation and the future of our partnership.
Yeah, good.
Do you have any questions?
Well, okay, so formality issue, I don't see a resolution where we're actually, like, approving this. Are we discussing this document? And what are we technically being asked? Because the foundation is fiscally independent of the school district.
Right.
We have essentially no authority, except we could have one of two board members, and we have our superintendent sitting on your board.
Right.
So we have a say
Right.
in what goes on.
Right.
And we obviously want you to succeed, and we help in many ways to do that.
Right, which are all documented in this memo.
In this memo, right.
Right.
So basically, we want the board's blessing to move forth, so they can take it to their board on Thursday and say this is a legitimate organization that the school district and the board supports. Because remember, it's kind of a trial run. And now this is good. We're on the right track, and we want the board to give us blessings so they can get the papers and everything signed on their end.
But this isn't something we actually have to vote on? Or is it something we need to vote on?
You wouldn't necessarily, but I think the thought is that you
Yeah.
would vote on this
Right.
memo of understanding, and that's why we had legal counsel review it, to
Right.
make sure that it was appropriate for you to do that, and to also make sure, as Juliana also made sure from their end, that there were options in case that, the relationship had to end, or one of the, it was
Right.
something with one of the entities, that everything was there that needed to be there. So I think the thinking is that the board would
Right.
take action to approve this memo as it stands.
Do you guys have any questions?
No, it's very simple
It's very simple and straightforward.
and
yeah.
clear.
Well, I have a couple things. I mean, first of all, you were here about a month ago, and you presented a wonderful presentation, which basically explained the good things that you're doing. And, I will echo, those are good things. I mean, some of the magazine articles, what we're seeing is really, really great. We have Dan that sits on your board. If we have two board members, we need to decide amongst ourselves if we want to increase that number to a second. Because I think one person is not increasing it beyond what's in but I think we need to have a conversation amongst us, in the next minute or two, or if we think that we need to put it off. But I think we need to have a conversation if we need to exercise that second item. There was issues on some salary commitments that I had. I am aware that, just in some casual conversations, that the monies that we pay are outside of the budget and through some, grant is not the right word, but city-county money.
Yeah, you say you had issues with it?
Well, not issues,
Okay.
I would just love some clarity of spelling out
Right.
exactly what we're committing to.
So we're committing to part of $50,000 towards her salary, that we use discretionary funds, city-county funds, that the superintendent can use towards consultants.
Okay.
So that's what we've committed to, that's what we've agreed upon. Anything over that amount, the foundation has agreed to pay above that $50,000.
Okay. And you're a full-time resource?
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
Full-time, yes.
good. Do we contribute any kind of benefits at all?
No,
No.
So it's just a true consulting
no,
relationship?
I'm truly a consultant,
Yes.
yes.
So what the district has decided, that at this time, we do not want a district employee. We didn't want to add the cost of adding a district administrator to our team. And we agreed with the foundation that the consultant model is a great model. Actually, some other districts have adopted this model because Juliana has worked so well at it. So they've adopted this model. Well, other districts are using the same funding source to fund their person as well.
Okay. So, although we have board, our board sees your financials and your budget, so your board does. So we indirectly see that through Dan. Um,
But
There's
you
some,
also receive financial information in the memos that I provide to the board 3 times a year. And then our year-end financial information as well is public information.
so I think, I had some questions about the 3 times, because I saw that specified. I didn't see anything in there that actually specified you'd actually be sharing your budget. It was just an update every 3 times. I'd almost like to see, because we are putting monies that we could be using toward other things, through Dr. Dixon's, I would love to be able to see the financials to be included in that report. Whether they get shared with us,
Right.
that's, I think, your prerogative.
No, we want to be transparent with that. I think part of since we have a board representative as part of the board and myself, I think the expectation is that when we give board updates, that board member who's serving on various committees can always update the board on financials or any programming. So that's one expectation. And then, of course, if the board, when those other documents 3 times a year are shared with us, we can just upload them in your board report. And we can even add a presentation. So we want to be as clear with those funds, and every way is open. The district superintendents can pay for these costs, they're legitimate costs. There's no commingling of funds or anything like that, and you can clarify that, Scott. So we're okay there, but I think however the board feels comfortable of how you would like those financials distributed to you, that we can do that. That's not any problems. And then maybe we have a update after each meeting, Dan, and maybe something
Yeah.
when we get to our committee reports.
I
that
would love
you
to
are-
celebrate the work that,
Yeah.
that Heights Schools Foundation does.
Right.
It's something that I'm so proud of as a community member. I'm not sure that I'm going to be deep enough in the weeds to give much of a comprehensive overview of the budget.
Right.
But
A suggestion maybe is that at the beginning of every fiscal year, that High School Foundation would come to us and give us an update of what they're planning to spend and how they're planning to spend. Remember that they also give out money. They give money to buildings. They just, remember we had a presentation at Wiley one year where they were giving out bags of items to each of the principals that came. So I think, the goal is to make sure they're taken in but also given out. So I think if they make that presentation at the beginning of the year, and then maybe 3 times a year can be something, the expectation that we set. So everyone is updated about where funds that are coming in and funds that are going out in our big projects too. Because we know we have the magazine, but we want to do some other outreach. I think it's whatever the board feels comfortable with and the information that you want, that we will make sure that that information is provided.
Yeah, I would
To
love
you.
to see a summary,
Yeah.
a quarterly summary. Have you
Yeah.
just come in and give us a quick update of where you are.
Yeah.
In terms of your fundraising goals and events and things that you're working on.
Yeah, I think you guys are doing an outstanding job. That's not to be questioned at this point. I think we're just looking at sort of where the rubber meets the road and, some of the deep questions about who pays for this, how does it get paid, the value we're getting out of it, because these are the questions that the community does ask us. And I've heard a lot of criticism from folks that were part of the organization that were unhappy with the change. I don't see that. I see a lot of wonderful events that have been put on, and I'm very satisfied with the direction you're going in, especially since you're really only, a year and a half old? So,
The organization has operated for 1 full year plus a few months as the Heights Schools Foundation, as I mentioned when we presented. And in terms of return on investment, you might remember from my presentation that we've actually donated back to the schools more than the cost of the contract that I hold. Just want to make that clear since I started. In fact, each year, even when we weren't completely done with the transition, we still returned in donations of all kinds back to the district, more than the value of the contract. Perhaps we could continue the conversation about the best way to report with our representatives, Dr. Dixon and Dan, and figure out a system that makes sense. We do file, of course, a 990 with the IRS, which publicly discloses everything that in terms of what we spent and what we raised, and documents what we did during the year. That's filed for us according to our fiscal year in November. So a great time to share that information with you is in December or January, right? So that's a good way to think of the flow of information.
And I think it's worth noting that the Heights School Foundation is new. We had an alumni association.
Right.
So that's very different for what we've built now. So I think
Right.
that distinction is very important, that we wanted a broader reach. We wanted to be able to get grants. It's very different from what we had before. So I think that's worth noting as we continue with on our journey.
So if the board is comfortable with the idea that we would continue the
Yeah.
conversation to figure out a system that
system,
makes
right,
the most
right.
sense. And I think the memo of understanding is just outlining the bare minimum, not the maximum, and doesn't limit us to figuring out the best way to communicate going forward.
Another thing that my reading of this, it does not actually spell out that the board is contributing to the salary. That's not part of this, so I don't, is it the intention long-term that our participation in that salary will continue at this level, will be?
It's a good question. Originally, my thinking was this person was going to be a part of our staff. So I set aside some dollars to pay a consultant to see if this idea actually worked for our district. After the second year, we said, oh my gosh, this does work. And then we decided the consultant model worked best. As I stated, some other districts adopted that model. So we saw we didn't need to hire someone on staff full-time and incur another FTE, that we could continue down this path with the Heights Foundation contributing part of the salary. So we had both partners buying in to this. So originally, yes, I was thinking that we needed a full-time person on staff to do this work. And so we decided that was not what we needed or what was best in this role. And I think some other districts, we were looking specifically at Shaker and Berea. And I think Berea and Lakewood. And I think Berea and Lakewood have the consultant model, and Shaker has a half.
Yeah, and Shaker, the director, is a part of the cabinet,
Right.
of the superintendent's cabinet, and has duties with the district as well as with the foundation.
As well as the foundation, yeah.
I should just say too, which is also part of my role, I also consult on the district side. I don't only work with the foundation, I consult directly and partner with and provide expertise on all things philanthropy and outreach.
So that's how we got to, so that's part of the reason it's not spelled out there, because we initially was going in a different direction. But I think long-term, this direction is best for the district. The district is not incurring the cost, it's a partnership. And I think the Heights School Foundation should pay share a cost in that person, and they totally agree. As we work together on what that's going to look like long-term, as they bring in more monies, we don't know what it could be. But right now, I think this is the right decision for us.
This memo suggests that that's an annual conversation that would
Yes.
happen
I was
in
just going to
January.
point that out,
thank
yeah.
you.
So
Okay,
under
thank
the
you.
relationship overview, the phrase is, or the clause, the district agrees to share the cost of the management of the HSF
Yeah.
with an annual commitment to be determined each year in January, subject to the annual approval of the district's Board of Education.
Right. So I thought-
That's great.
So that gives us a chance to weigh in each year. And in addition, as we've needed more expertise or contracted services for administrative needs, the foundation bears those costs directly. So the foundation itself pays for additional hands on working on managing our database of 55,000 alumni, and also in marketing and event planning services. Betsy Stimpert, who many of you have met.
And the district provides the office space.
Thank you for
and
that,
all
by
that
the
stuff.
way.
So, you know,
Yes.
so we have
Archives. Archive space as
archives.
well,
Yeah,
which
we
we're
just created the
growing
new
into.
archive
Thank you for
space.
that.
So,
Yes. And that allows for this ongoing partnership. It makes it possible for me to consult day to day. I'm here 40 hours a week, every day, able to consult directly with staff on any kind of philanthropy issues that come up in the district.
Dr. Dixon, you had said that we're not sure what it could be. I have to say that I know what it was. I have been a member of the Heights Alumni Association, the Heights Foundation. I've been on this board for probably over 20 years, and I have never seen it taken to these heights. And it has been an absolute joy. Heights, oh, that is a little pun there. It has been a joy to work with Juliana. We meet every Thursday morning for almost 2 years now, because it was officially by law a little over a year that we are the Heights Schools Foundation. But prior to that, in that transition, we worked very hard, and I couldn't be in a better position and working with a finer individual than Juliana, and of course with Dr. Dixon and the board members. It is a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
So there's two things I think I'd like to see in the reports, either through Dan, is really where you are when it comes to fundraising expectations and where you're actually at. And then the other issue is, I think there's going to be a time where we're going to have to, either through the Bound Accountability Commission, revisit the rationale on why we are unable to raise the kind of money that we thought we'd be able to raise from private sources in our construction project. Now, we've been through this. This is a philanthropy issue. I've actually had a conversation with you about this when you first started, and it's like, we've seen the consultants, the experts. It's not possible. We've worked hard to try to make it work. I'm not looking for any answer right now, but I was just approached this weekend about, well, where's all that money that you were going to get? And it's like, it's not possible. We had great intentions walking into the bond issue and raising money for our construction project, but just wearing your philanthropy hat, it would be helpful for you to be prepared to address that at some point in the future when we're winding this project down, which will be probably a year from now.
If I could chime in on that, I would say my first year, there was a board expectation that I raise money. And that didn't go well. I raised $75,000 from one donor. So we decided then that that was really not the right work for a superintendent. And maybe that commitment wasn't the right commitment at that time. Maybe it felt right at the time, but we just didn't have the resources. So when we went in a different direction, that wasn't the goal. It wasn't the goal when we went in this direction to say that we needed money for building things. It was, how can we leverage the relationships? Because I was going out, I was meeting all types of alumni members who wanted to do so many things for the district, but they were specific. They did not want to contribute to a building project. They wanted to give monies to teachers, classroom experiences. That's what they wanted to give monies to. So when we entered this partnership, my conversations with Juliana was, how can we take, your background and your knowledge of the communities and alumni and get people to buy into our vision. We look at our strategic plan and look at these goals. We wanted our students to have those, we're looking at goal 2, educational approach and student outcomes, and who would give us dollars for that. So more recently, remember she talked about the person, the 2 alumni who gave band uniforms, right? So That's wonderful. So here are two people that she met, one person and he's called his friend, I believe, and they totally outfitted the band. So we saw that people wanted to give in a very different way than what the district had committed to. And that was okay. At least I shared with her that that was okay. So maybe we revisit that, but I think we have to be realistic about those expectations and be able to say as a board and an organization that that wasn't the right ask now. Maybe it was at that time, but it's not now. And maybe find some other ways to fill those gaps on that. So it's okay, I believe, and I can say it to the community, that we've gone in a different direction and we have a new ask. And that ask is for our community and alumni to look at our 5 goals and to think about what do they want to give in their hearts to lift students' experiences, to lift the outcomes, to help us have a better outreach with parents and engage in our communities. And if they believe that they have something that they want to give based on those asks, then give it. That's just, and I'll be willing to say that publicly too, if need be. And I think it's okay that we don't get the other ask.
You just have.
I just have, yeah, you're right.
Sorry.
Well,
Yeah.
it didn't work. I mean, it didn't work even before you came.
Yeah.
There was consultants that Doug Hoyer brought on to do this work.
Yeah.
And that didn't work either.
Yeah.
So it's good to see we've tried multiple.
Yeah, but what we're doing now is the right work. Yeah,
Which could lead to eventual donations for buildings.
exactly, right,
You don't know.
yeah, you never know.
Thank you.
Thank you. So they have our blessing to move forward on Thursday. So how do we want to do that?
Do we want,
So I move that we approve the MOU with the Heights Schools Foundation.
I second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Hines,
yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Posh.
Yes.
Ms. Wright,
Yes.
Ms. Serini.
Yes. And I did have one more comment. I just wanted to remind you that the definition of alumni is not someone necessarily who graduated, it's anyone who's ever attended. So please keep that in mind when you're outreaching. So broaden your horizon, is what I'm saying.
Well beyond alumni, we're not the Alumni Foundation anymore. We
Right.
have been for quite some time, and I couldn't agree more with you.
So keep a broad horizon.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so we have Dr. Paul Lombardo, if you come up with third and final reading on policies, Group B, and second reading of policies in Group C.
Yes. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
You are going to be asked tonight to take action on the third reading for Group B, which is 15 policies. And there were some questions that were given about Group B, but I guess we could start with the motion, and then I can answer any questions.
A motion for C.
No, for Group
B.
B,
For the
third
third and
reading
final
to
reading.
approve.
Third
for the
reading
third
of
reading,
B.
yeah.
Third,
Yeah.
okay, I'm sorry, I'm thinking B is the second. Okay. So do we have a motion to approve?
A motion
Group
that
B.
we approve policies that are grouped together and known as Group B.
Second?
All right, I know Molly has sent a couple questions. Policy
second.
5.
We needed a second. I'll
We're
second.
still-
Oh, I thought I heard a second. I apologize.
Go ahead.
Okay. Policy eligibility 5111. The question had to do with when students are coming to the district or transferred, do we get those files or in a timely manner? And we haven't had many issues with DYS, but we have, if we do have an issue not getting those student records, then we reach out to the superintendent, and we have found a lot of luck getting that back to us quickly.
Okay, I'm just wondering whether that delay would interfere with a student's ability to come back into the building and start classes, that's all. Because
No,
there
that-
can be a lag with the paperwork,
Right.
but I want
that-
to make sure the student gets to real school quickly.
Absolutely, a student would be allowed, yes.
Thank you.
And then there was a question about 5112, the entrance requirement, September 30th versus August 1st. And this did come up in our meetings last year in our policy review committee. The committee decided to put forth what our practices are now, and then we are bringing that back to the committee starting in October to look at data to see what the implications are of those two different dates.
Okay, I have no idea what those implications are, but I hear parents talking about, oh, whatever the birthday cutoff is, and it's something people worry about, and I just don't know, what it means in real life.
And the committee agreed, we had that same notion, but we didn't have enough information at the time, so we're going to start bringing data back, and we are going to look into that one.
Great, thank you.
Okay. And the drug prevention, you asked about toxic vapors, which would include e-cigs, and that would. That's policy 5530.
Okay, so that's a broad enough definition that it lives above whatever our next policy is involving tobacco and tobacco delivery mechanisms.
That's
Okay,
true, yes.
thank you.
All right, any other questions?
Call the roll.
Mr. Posh?
Yes.
Ms. Serini?
Yes.
Ms. Wright? Yeah. Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
All right, and finally, we have a second reading of Policy Group C. There's only 3 for this one, so we're winding these down. So this would be the second reading, no action needed tonight by the board. But if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or you could send them to me, and I'll be happy to respond as well, either way.
I have nothing.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, so for my superintendent's report, just got a couple highlights. First, I hope that the board likes our more informative weekly report. We try
Yes.
to give you more information of what's happening in the district, so give you more reading.
I was going to say, you just like to give us more reading assignments. That's what's really
Yeah,
happening.
the
Yes.
cabinet team did doing a nice job, and with Scott and making sure we collect information for you to know what's happening. So I just want to say we had a great opening activities across the district. It started with the home of the New Heights Tiger campaign, in which it was someone's mentioned. And you may have seen the yard signs across the district. The goal was for our principals and staff to go meet our students in their homes and welcome our kindergartners. So we have 360 new kindergartners that we welcome this year.
316?
360.
360, great.
Great.
Yep, as of today. We also were seeing several ice cream socials, and even at the high school, we had the band welcoming our students as they came in and the new principal. I thought that was a nice job. I think that we had a lot of feedback on Facebook and Twitter. 19,000 hits with that one. So nice touch by the high school. So thank you, Dee Dee, and thank you to the high school team for that. Our enrollment today is just right at 5,000, 2219 at K-5 schools, 1,500 at high school, 140 at options, 1,100, a little over 1,100 to middle schools, and the rest are pre-K students. The first football game, we had our first teacher union and administrative tailgate. So the Teachers Union is partnering with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, so we thought the first tailgate would be a nice opportunity for us to raise some funds. Over $450 was raised, $410 was raised for that event. So nice turnout, we really enjoyed that. Online registration is kicked off. Now it's available for parents, so parents can register their students online. So thank you for Student Services for that implementation. Remember Strategic Goal 3, we want to make sure that we removed all those barriers for parents' registration and get into technology. The Kiwanis. So I know you heard about the loss of Mark Harris, so we definitely send our condolences to the family of Mark Harris, who was the president of the Kiwanis of the Heights, and he died unexpectedly. We have a meeting slated for tomorrow night at 7 o'clock to talk about the next steps. The district is committed to moving forward with the programs. The Kiwanis Club has paid for all of the fees to start the Builders Club, the Key Club, and the K Club in the district.
Good.
And the district has partnered with the teachers' unions, and we're going to provide a stipend for all of our advisors in our schools. So I'll give you more information after that meeting tomorrow. We noticed, I know there was a couple questions about some of the things we highlighted on your weekly report, those building level action plans. Again, as stated, 4 years ago, we started that. The Ed Services Department wanted to provide a way for our buildings to document how they were moving, improving and showing growth in several areas, and curriculum assessments and school climate. So each school has a electronic folder that we call the building level action plans. They call it their blips, I think is what they call blaps. They call it their blaps. You know, we have acronyms for everything. And they work on these plans with their building leadership teams. And this has been a great way to organize that work. They get ongoing feedback from the Ed Services teams about things that are in their BLAPs and things that should come out of their BLAPs. But it's definitely a collaborative work in that they get ongoing feedback with these plans. And it keeps them focused. So I stated before, remember when we were suggesting that you go out and visit the buildings? And I think in there I said, feel free to ask the principals to share with you their building level action plans. Our classroom numbers are being monitored closely. I know there's been some rumors that we have over 10 extra kids in our special ed classrooms. That is not the case. We are monitoring our numbers and making adjustments closely. Actually, we just approved for Karen to hire an additional intervention specialist for our special ed unit. So we are monitoring those numbers closely, and we do not have 10 over in our special ed classrooms or any other classroom. Principal leadership development. We talked about the principles of reading this new book, Nothing is Impossible by Dr. Lorraine Monroe. And when you get a chance, you may want to Google her and look at the work that she did and start in the school. And I want to share a quote that she shared in the book. And she states, our goal to create the school was to create a school concerned with excellence, quality, and equity, one that would train kids to be competitors at the highest level. She went on to say, I knew the equity, the equality we sought would be based not on our location or the ethnic and social makeup of our neighborhood, but on the high level of expectations and beliefs of the person in front of each classroom and the vision, acts, energy, and courage of the person in the principal's chair. So again, I think it takes courage to be that principal. I believe that we have the right principals in our buildings, the right leaders, and we have the right people who are working with them, and we have the right teachers. And we're making sure that our teachers hold our kids to high expectations and make sure that our building principals are visionaries and encouraging our teachers and making sure that our schools have a warm and welcome climate. And thus, we go back to welcoming our students. It's important that our principals are out in the communities. When you think about Cleveland Heights, it's only, 8 square miles, and University Heights is what?
2.8.
2.8. So we don't have a wide span for our people to going across town and meeting and greeting our families. And just excited about the work that we're doing, our principal leadership and development. And there's an office where Dr. Womack is working to make sure principals have the support that they need, and supported by the Ed Services team. Public Education Policy Forum held last week. That was interesting. I enjoyed that having that conversation and serving on that panel. And thank you for the ones who were able to attend that event. And there's a video online if you want to take a look at. And thank you to the Women League of Voters and the other sponsors. Canterbury Heights Middle School named PTA School of Excellence. Canterbury Elementary School and Heights Middle School have been awarded a 2-year National PTA School of Excellence of distinctions for their commitment to inclusivity of families and enriching the education experience of all students. So we're excited about that, and they've worked hard to get there. I think we're going to see some more great work from the PTAs throughout the district. And the last thing I have is we talked about increasing community engagement, and in my opening letter, I talked about ways that we're going to do that. We're going to start with our coffee chats again. We have a new student cadre of 15 students who are coming on board, and we're going to start that next month. But we're also going to start a new parent and family engagement task force. So we decided that we needed a 3 to 5 year district family engagement plan. We don't have one, and we've been piecemealing it. So it's time for us to get serious about what that looks like, and we're going to take the time out to engage parents into helping us craft that plan. So you'll hear more information. The community is going to be on our website. We're going to be asking community members to join, along with, and you have some information later about 2 committees, the Late Finance Committee and the Late Advocacy committees. The Advocacy Committee would be co-facilitated by me and Scott. Be interesting, fun. In the Finance Committee, you have some more information later next month from Scott Gaynor as he gets ready to present in October the budget. And then 2 events, real quick, the last thing. Father walks. So you're going to see those fathers and father figures have an opportunity to walk their students to school. I think we hear so much negative publicity about the lack of fathers in students' lives, and I think our principals have done a good job of making sure that they understand the importance of our fathers and highlighting our fathers. So if you take a look at your calendar, you're going to see several schools are going to have father walks. And then the board, you ask that we have our data discussion, and that we're dividing our data discussion into 3-part series, led by Allison Bird, and who's so excited about this work. Yes, she loves this stuff. Our first session, we moved to September 25th, because we changed that work session. So the first session, we'll talk about the state report card. The state report cards will be released on September 13th. So we have a conversation about that then on the 25th. But the other 2 meetings, the board president and vice president stated that we wanted to take a deeper dive, and I agree. So we're going to start looking at our own assessments that we have decided to emphasize, and show you how those assessments link to the curriculum that we are teaching in the classrooms, and tell you how that data is informing our teachers on what steps they need to take with our students. So I think thank you. I think 3 sessions will get us there, and then we'll be able to ask those questions. And Allison and the Ed Services team, it's what they do all the time. Felicia is leading our building leadership teams in those meetings and those discussions. So I think we're going to find that those are going to be some very enriching conversations that I hope that other people will come out and take a part in listening to. All right, so that's it for my superintendent.
Can I ask a
Yes.
quick question?
Mhm.
Last year, Ms. Bird did a wonderful presentation in the mini auditorium. Was the plan for this September 25th to take place there as well, or is this something different envisioned?
I was envisioning something different. I was envisioning, yes, she can show us and we can look at how well our students are performing. But I really want the board to think about, when we think about, are we really measuring what matters? And are those things that the state states, it goes back to that conversation we had last week. Because that data is old data, and it is one point of time. And we have all of these assessments that are informing us on how well our students are mastering our own curriculum. So my hope was that we're taking a deeper dive and maybe sitting and having intimate conversations so you can understand what piece of data ties to what. So maybe the second and third session I envision as intimate. We can move to a larger venue. But maybe the first session, if you want a presentation, we can get a presentation, but I'm not sure how meaningful a presentation is for us. So you guys tell me, if we want a presentation, we can do the presentation that Allison is going to do. Yes, she's going to do that part, but coupled with a deeper dive in what that all means in a bigger scheme.
Was your concern about the content of the presentation or where it was being delivered?
Well, I think that last year, Allison opened quite a few eyes in the mini auditorium.
Correct.
By giving some very concrete examples of how the state's test diminishes
Right.
the achievements of students in the inner ring, students like ours.
Right.
And I think that that was and remains a very important message, and she is so good about really identifying concrete examples that open people's eyes to some of the challenges that the state's test presents to our students.
Right.
So these may be two different.
No, it's not two different things, but
events.
what I was hoping that is that, yes, she opened our eyes, she enlightened us. However, I think that we need to dig deeper and say, okay, and now what? Now we
Amen.
know.
Yes.
Okay, now what? What are we going to do about it? It's done. Now, so when we look at, how many of our students are graduating, if we look at our cohorts, we have 500 students that are entering the 9th grade, but we see we're graduating 300. What happened to the 200 kids? What are they not mastering? Are we asking those questions? And I think that's what the board need to say. Okay, are we having a number of students are not passing a certain class? Why? What are those classes? So I want us to be able to get to that discussion, and I think it's good that we inform the community of how well our students are doing on the state test, but I don't want us to use all our energy there. I really want us to utilize our energy in saying that we know our students are more than a test score. So what are some other things that we need to focus on? And what are some other conversations that we need to have? Because we're not a district full of poor kids who can't learn, and that's not what we are. We are a district of students with great minds that we need to figure out how to engage them in a way in the classrooms, make sure the teachers have the support that they need so that they're mastering the curriculum.
Yeah, so I think there's actually really two
Me too.
subjects
Yeah.
here.
Two
At least
audiences.
that's what two audiences and really two subjects. Take Christa's example a moment ago about measuring the number of kids that we have in music. And I'm not saying that's a definitive measure that we need to dwell on right now, or even if that is one of the measurements that matter. But there are clear measurements that are valuable to us as we run a school district that I think we in our community think are important. And this is unrelated to the test scores.
Yes.
Because, which I'm going to touch on that in a minute, but Dr. Dixon, you're dead on. I mean, I think we really need to find out what those measurements are for us and what matter to us and what are important to the community, and set the dialogue of, okay, well, this is a Heights student and this is what they excel at, and we know we do a good job in this. We also know we do a poor job in that, but we've got a plan to deal with these particular issues. Whereas what we know in the state report card is something totally different. So,
Right.
yes.
Right. Right. I think we're saying the same thing. I guess I just didn't want us to focus on the former. Because, because we get to that and people say, oh my gosh. And I just think that sometimes people, when they see that data, they draw conclusions. And I just don't want us to draw conclusions about barriers or hurdles or things that we think may be hindering that, but just say, you know what, that is what it is. And then we inflame the community when we don't get to where they believe that we are, or think that we can't get to where they believe we can get to because they have certain beliefs about our kids and where they're coming from.
So this is, one of the things I was going to do in my report this evening is thank Allison for a wonderful presentation to University Heights City Council. And besides showing them Wiley and then being thoroughly impressed with Wiley, the building looked beautiful. I think the biggest takeaway that those folks walked away with was really understanding how inadequate the state's report card measures really are and what they mean. I mean, just a simple fact of, we got a D, okay? 80% of all the school districts in Ohio got a D. Only 2% got A's. So when you take your report card home to your mom and dad and you get a D, it's like, I want you to get an A next time, okay? You don't come, I don't want to look at your ugly face until you get an A, okay? Thankfully, my parents weren't that way. But long and short is, an A is unachievable statistically. We are unable to get an A. And it's just due to the metrics of the test. And you could look at, and what does that do? How do we figure that out? And that was eye-opening to these council members. They've got to sell their community and get people to move into University Heights. Our members in Cleveland Heights have to do the same, and they're being compared to other school districts that get an A or a B, and it's impossible for a district like ours to get that same kind of score. So, I think the issue here is we need to help our community understand what these are, what these mean to us, and where we fit with like school districts. We have to go to the community as board members and not justify why we got a D, but explain that, we have other measurements that we look at that we think are far more important. The state report card is really not a benchmark of performance in the district. This is what really is the benchmark. And we have to understand. So I think, yes, we need to understand what our measurements are. But I also think we need to understand where we fit with the other school districts. And comparing us to like school districts, although I wouldn't say all entering school districts are like us, but it's helpful to know where we stand with these. I think that's an important,
Agreed.
I think that's a very, very important piece, because we're going to get, I'm sure, a not a very flattering score just because of the nature of how the tests are conducted. How do we compare this year with our like school districts? We don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but I think we need to understand that. And this is the second piece that I think you're in agreement. When you said we needed both.
Absolutely, and I think that we need to engage actively advocating for our kids, our district, our inner ring, so that we get measures that are more reflective of our kids, because this is also tied into the funding that we receive. So I think that we really do need to continue to educate the public as a part of the advocacy work that is so important to us.
Would you like to see this meeting then in the auditorium, or do you want, is your?
I would prefer we not meet in the mini auditorium.
Okay.
I think it's really not conducive for a board meeting. I would let you choose where you think it's best to do that.
Okay.
I think it's really, really hard. You're up there on a stage. Although this is a little bit of a weird dais, but
It's not deep enough for an angle to be able to see each other. So we end up all in a line, which makes the conversation much more stilted.
Right. Well, also, speak of advocacy, we are, the First Ring Soups, we're meeting with the state superintendent on Thursday.
You are? Are you going down to Columbus, or is
No,
he
he's
coming up
coming
here?
2 o'clock, so, and that's, we're gonna be talking about this on Thursday.
Bravo.
Okay.
Any other topics about the test scores or other questions for Dr. Dixon for her report? Let's move on to the treasurer's report. Thank you.
Okay.
Good
Yeah, thank
information.
you.
Thank you very much. You know, you provide all this detail in advance. It's really great to see. It's extremely helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, under my report, we just have the 5-year forecast for approval, and although we just went over it and had your approval 2 weeks ago, we're now back on cycle, so at each regular board meeting, the 5-year forecast will be here. And also, there was one change from 2 weeks ago. You'll remember that Frank gave a presentation that night and talked about the fact that he was willing to reduce his budget based on work that he'd been doing, so he offered a 30% reduction, so we took it.
Of course.
And so that 30% reduction in the IT budget is in this forecast.
So that's going to be fiscal year 20 or fiscal year 19?
Fiscal year 18, 19.
Okay.
Yes, so, and forward. So that's the one change. And,
Thank you, Frank.
And as Ms. Lewis also pointed out in the questions that she asked, it was more an observation than a question, I think, is just that the vouchers continue to grow. That last year's actual numbers ended up being about $8.5 million in total for vouchers, and it's projected to be 9.2 in the forecast for this school year. So,
And those eligibility is based on our performance on the state test scores.
Right, so
For-
there you
for
go.
at least the one.
The state report card leads to money.
Yeah.
Less measurement for us.
Yes.
That takes money away from our kids.
correct. So this is, so I have it again for your approval tonight, the updated.
Do I have a
forecast.
motion to approve this?
I motion that we accept the 5-year forecast as submitted.
I second.
Okay, we spent a lot of time 2 weeks ago on this. Any other thoughts, questions? You'll call the roll?
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Posh?
Yes.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Serini?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
So moving on to my report, I'd like to echo Ari's comments about you handling the heat issues and handling it well.
Thank you.
You began communicating with us, I believe, last night at around 10 o'clock and ended at 4 in the morning.
Yes.
These are
needs to sleep?
decisions that are not taken.
Absolutely.
As much as it's easy to say, it's hard to be in those buildings, it's equally hard to notify a family that they've got to really completely rethink what they're doing with their kids on short notice. I mean, it's a no-win, ugly, difficult situation for all parties. And when you close the buildings, it just leads to another day of school eventually down the road. It is just not, it's not an easy decision to make. So, thank you very much. We know
We made it
these.
early today. 6
Yes, you
o'clock.
did.
So you get to go to bed.
Yes.
Keep on thinking those days where, you hear the forecaster saying, 20 inches of snow tomorrow, you cancel snow, there's not an inch of snow on the
Right,
ground.
right,
But,
yeah.
I mean, this is
Yeah.
easier to do. A couple things that I'd like to mention. Love the testing calendar on the website. What a great tool for parents. I think that's very, very helpful. Again, thank you very much, Allison, for your presentation to University Heights. And I know it was a team effort.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
thank you very
Oh, yeah.
much.
She loves that stuff, so it helps.
You know, it's one of those things in our job where it's just, labor of love. Oh, yeah, I'll do it for you. But, yeah, it's done. Thank you. I'd love to have information when the dust settles of where we're actually at with enrollment. I heard today Shaker's down 100 kids this school year.
Really?
Fire didn't help.
Well, I don't think the fire helped, but I think that's more of an across-the-board thing.
Yeah.
I just sort of like to see where we're at.
Where we at? Okay.
And this is, when you're ready, there's I know it takes a lot of work to prepare this. one of the challenges we have as a school district is kids show up. You don't know how many kids you're gonna have in a classroom until they all show up, so you gotta make staffing, issues, so very curious to see where we stand. There's lots and lots of rumors out there in the community. Another one I heard is, Fairfax is up 40 kids this year. Who knows? I think I'd be real curious to see where we're at. Let's not buy into rumors. Thank you for putting on the Family University.
That was great.
I think
Yeah.
for a first year, what a great start. Let's look back at how Dublin has done it, what we've learned, reevaluate it.
Yeah.
But, taking the leap to do something new is innovative. It's great to see. I know there was great challenges, but absolutely great successes in the event. So
I
thank
met
you.
2 new families there that day. It was their first week of school with us.
And I,
Great.
yeah, and I gotta tell you, I'm so proud to seeing those, welcome to Tiger Nation, home of a new tiger sign.
I love those signs. I just spotted another one today that I hadn't noticed before. Yeah.
They are all over the place, and when you see that tiger logo and you start associating with the school, this is a community thing, as Christa, I'm gonna point to Christa a couple times tonight, but, people are paying their tax dollars. Sometimes you're using the schools, sometimes you're not. Sometimes you use the schools at one point, but just seeing, viable, credible, people who can choose, making those choices, I think it's great to see. Before you tonight, I have the first reading of 2 draft policies. These were done in a vacuum, my little vacuum, so it's time to discuss, look at the need for these. We have an existing policy, 9140, which is, in my opinion, I think outdated, which is why I'm asking for us to look at this. We, as an organization, are relying on more task forces that are run by the superintendent. And we are asking the community to step up to be on more long-going committees, such as the Lay Finance Committee. And the way those policies are technically written, they don't really work well together. I mean, I know when we set about creating the Bond Accountability Commission, we had a lot of questions on how that would all work. And I think we're at the stage right now where we need to legitimize how we deal with task force committees and citizens ongoing committees. This is something I believe, based on our bylaws, we have to have 3 readings for. Is it 3 or 2 for this? 3. I don't want to introduce it as an emergency, because it's not an emergency. I want to go through the process. We are looking at filling some of these committees relatively soon. So I would like the second reading of this to take place in our next work session, and then the final reading to take place on our regular board meeting next month. If you have comments, I'm certainly open to them. I mean, there needs to be a point where we need to have a discussion, but there also needs to be a time when you folks have an opportunity to read them. I'm hopeful to get feedback from not only the elected board, but Dr. Dixon and Scott. Many of these things are resting on your shoulders, Dr. Dixon, and how to implement. One of them is the task force.
Right.
And how much autonomy you have and how that actually runs.
Okay.
And how we get involved. And then there's the general ongoing committees.
Like the lay committees.
Yeah. Do you guys have any thoughts
I
about
had
these
a
right now?
couple very cursory thoughts as I was reading the first round. We have trouble already with the Bond Accountability Commission, with what's the difference between a commission and a committee. And as we talk to each other, we confuse the 2 C words on a regular basis. So I would propose that you be very deliberate in having separate names so that the superintendent-run objects or superintendent-called objects have a different name than the board-run, board-called objects?
Task forces versus committees,
For
instance,
example,
or-
yeah. You know, in the nonprofit world, you have standing committees, you know, you always have your, which exist regardless of who the executive director is, right? Whereas your task forces are connected to the superintendent or the executive director. So maybe that nomenclature is clearer for people. I don't know. I was sort of reading the text going, okay, which one's which? And I understand the different goals of them, but I want to make sure that they have very different names.
And I see the task force as a group of people who are working to legitimize a possible project, something that we may want to do.
Mhm.
And then
So that's
the-
inherently short-term.
Right. And then the committee is something that a group of people who are evaluating ongoing work, they continue. So like our lay finance or
Mhm.
advocacy, those will continue. The bond accountability commission, that one. But the task force are kind of short-lived.
Yeah.
We had the Communities and Schools Task Force. We had the Equity Task Force. Actually, that group is continuing, so maybe we need to change their name, the Equity Committee. But, yeah. So you're right. I think distinguishing those, and I'll take a look
Because
at
that
them,
also
too.
helps people who volunteer their time understand what sort of a commitment is involved.
And that was the point, yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Right.
I mean, I think the word task force is perfect
Mhm.
when you have one task that you need to get done.
Right.
And it closes out.
Yeah.
The lay finance committee, the true value in the lay finance committee is understanding how it all puts together. And then, you know, maybe 6 months later, look at it again.
Mhm.
6 months later, look at it again.
Yeah.
6 months later, looking at it again. So I think you need some continuity.
Yes,
In
absolutely.
that. The word commission is probably unfortunate, but there was confusion in the community on the FAC
Mhm.
and distinct language that was used in the bond and how the bond was sold to the public and how there would be a bond accountability commission. We were actually criticized for you never put a commission in place. And it's like, well, we had the FAC, which is the commission. So there was intentional use
Of
of
that
that
word.
name
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
of the uncertainty of that. But I do have to say that, you know, where this could go is, you know, maybe the folks in the bond, I mean, they have a task. They're looking at the middle schools at this moment of time, okay? The high school project is, from a fiscal point of view, closing out.
Basically done, yeah.
You know, I'd like to see how it all comes together in the end and have the bond accountability look at it. We also know that there's some PI issues that have been incorporated into the middle schools just because of the nature of the project. So I know the bond accountability has looked at some of those.
Yes.
There might be some value on rethinking how that organization works in the future and possibly making it a ongoing committee. But at this moment in time, it's done when the middle schools is done and when the bond expires or when the bond's used up.
Mhm.
I mean, maybe there's some value that we can discuss at a later date of how it all works together, because there might be some good continuity, maybe some value that we can find by continuing that. But that's something I think is, I mean, this whole concept of adding, you know, a couple of new ongoing committees and additional task forces, I think is a lot of work. There's some culture change
Right.
that has to go with it. I'm a little afraid to throw too much stuff in the works right now. Or
Yeah, because
suggest
we
that.
are asking for a commitment from people in the community who have specific knowledge and specific interest. And it's a bunch of work. And there's no question, but
I
we
think
also
what-
have these people with amazing resources who live here, so,
Yeah, and that's a good thing.
yes.
But I think there needs to be like an end product. So, you know, your task force, we always present, they come to the the board and they're presenting something for approval. You have Ms. Gould's working with the grading task force, so you'll see that coming in the spring. She's working with the consultant Doug Reeves, so you'll see that. So maybe, the committees we move to, I know we had talked about that there's a presentation from the BUD, we've not gotten it from the BUD Accountability Committee, so we need to think about, what is it that we want from them? We want their time and their expertise, but what's the end product? What does that look like? We may need to talk about that, and I haven't had a chance to look at it, but I'll look at it again, so maybe we can embed that into the committee so they know that it is ongoing work and there are presentations of some sort, so people can understand what, when you want to, the gifted, there was a presentation, so we're, those, we want the board to see, this is the work and these are the conclusions and the next steps of that work. How can we make sure that happens in the committee work?
I think that those committees might benefit from some sample bylaw language as well. Just in terms of, the basic nuts and bolts. How long is a term? Do all the terms expire at the same time? Or are they rolling? How is leadership of the commission going to be selected, and how often is that going to happen? What is the mission? How do we decide on a mission? Is, we are prone to mission creep.
Yes,
So, I think that all of these issues are, and when a commission loses a member for whatever reason, how are replacement members found? Is there an ongoing application process, or is there a deadline? And these could be really unique to the needs of each independent commission, but some boilerplate bylaws might be very helpful as well.
So what I can do, Jim, I'll get some additional examples and attach them to you guys.
Okay.
And I'll send those out. Okay, I'll work on that this week.
Great.
Okay, all right.
Additional thoughts on this issue? Okay, moving on to a resolution in support of raising the age of tobacco sales. So we've had just not like public discussions, but individually we've heard from community members. Dan, you were approached by an organization that is lobbying the city governments to raise
the legal age for purchase of all tobacco products, including vaping products. Most critically for them is the vaping products, because that is the product of choice today for our teens.
So I've taken parts of a resolution that is a stock resolution from an organization called Tobacco 21. I've incorporated some of our own additional language into that. I've included in the documentation shared with you the rationale and why this is important. Do you guys feel this is important enough to consider a resolution?
I certainly do. And, I'd like to give a little bit of my rationale, if you don't mind. So when I was about 15, I started smoking. And I smoked a pack and a half a day for 15 years. And it is the single stupidest decision I made in my life, which in my life really says something. And I have a 15-year-old son at home. And so this sort of thing is very, very personal to me. And I think that there are many reasons to support this proposal. I think that on top of the fact that it is a critical health issue for our students and our community, it offers a wonderful opportunity to work in tandem with our host cities and to show a united front for the health of our communities with our friends on the Cleveland Heights Council who are pursuing this. I can share with you that the city of Euclid just adopted this language in legislation a couple of weeks ago. I know that some initial discussions have been made with the city of University Heights, and even some feelers have been put out to our friends in South Euclid. So this is a very important health issue that we might really be able to save some kids falling into a trap that too many of our kids do while they are among us.
I have recurring conversations with a teenager I know about why vaping is an unknown danger. And no, it's not better and safer than cigarettes. We don't know, and the statistics will come out when you are sick in 10 years. So I think that although this is likely just purely symbolic on our part, it's an important statement to make. Because the whole e-cigarette industry justified itself originally as being a way for people to wean themselves off of cigarettes, but really all they're doing is selling watermelon-flavored nicotine, which is not intended for adults. You know, the little bottles of nicotine that you can buy all up and down Lee Road are, you know, just look at the flavors. Yeah, it's little liquid nicotine. It's about 2 or 3 fluid ounces, and it's watermelon flavored, or strawberry and chocolate flavored, or grape flavored, my favorite. And it's just as obvious a ploy to attract your middle school and high school. Well, by high school they're already addicted. They got caught in middle school, and it's the same thing as the grape flavored cigarillos. Yeah. I mean, you know. The black and milds that come in chocolate flavored, those are not intended for adult consumption either. So
This generation's Joe Camel.
yeah, right. Joe Camel doesn't sell anymore, but
Good.
Well, I like the ads, the full page ads in the Plain Dealer. And yes, someone still occasionally reads the Plain Dealer. So, but a full page ad that says this product is not for children, and you know darn well it's for children when you have bubblegum flavored.
yeah, it's crazy. Now, you know, if they had tequila flavored nicotine, I might consider it, but no. So
my feeling is this is all about the health and safety of our students.
yeah,
And it's not only our students, but it's the communities.
it's everybody's children who are being specifically marketed to.
If you're a parent and want to buy it for your kid because your child is not of age, you know, that's that's your free will.
Right.
But, and I just don't think I'd like to see this prevented.
Now, we don't allow smoking in our schools and on our campuses. And I don't think we should allow vaping either, but we know that there are kids with jewels in their back pocket all throughout the building. So, you know, the enforcement is not going to be easy, but I would like to see that as an extension because, you know, it is technically in the student handbook, thou shalt not walk around with a jewel in class, but.
You know, I can share a little bit about the legislation that Cleveland Heights is looking at adopting. It's quite interesting. First of all, enforcement will be done by the Cuyahoga County Board of Health.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really based on, that they're focusing on the sale of these products to young people who are not eligible to buy. And that's why they're very intentionally raising the age to be outside of any school student, any one of our kids. And they're also very careful to not criminalize the possession of these products. Which I think is wonderful that nobody wants more kids to have a criminal record. So it's a civil matter. It's not a criminal matter for the possession and use of it. And they're going after the licenses of the stores that are found through sting operations to be selling to minors. As you said, this does parallel quite well with our student code of conduct, also, which I think is perfect for us to engage on. So it's some very thoughtful legislation that I would hope this would signal our committed support for.
Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
I second.
Any further discussion? Call the roll.
Ms. Serini,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Ms. Wright, Mr. Posh.
Yes.
Mr. Heinz.
Yes.
So that concludes my report. Board committee reports. Are there any this month?
I can tell you a little bit. The Heights Coalition for Public Education is meeting next on the 24th. I don't know the location of that meeting yet, but I can get that information. The Bond Accountability Commission, I'm sad to say, had a resignation. Alexis Abramson, who has served on the board, I think since its beginning, is moving to Boston. So hopefully she will continue to wear her tribe gear with pride. And we thank her for her participation on the Bond Accountability Commission, which dovetails into the previous conversation that we had. I think that we really do need to freshen up our membership. We've been having a hard time getting a whole lot of people in one room, and so we need to consider next steps on that. I wanted to also celebrate Dr. Dixon's performance and participating in the How Schools Are Evaluated panel. I thought that was a real evening of pride for our school district. We had heavy hitters locally on that panel. It was co-sponsored by the Cleveland Plain Dealer, Case Western Reserve University, the League of Women Voters, and it was a good night for the Heights schools. Great advocacy that we hosted. That's everything I have.
Prior to that, I sat in a meeting with Dr. Dixon with the Career Tech program. And you were wonderful there, explaining everything of where we stand with the program, where's it going, introduction to the new principal. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
So you had a busy night that night.
Yeah.
It was quite a night.
Other board committee reports?
Just that we completed our evaluations. So,
Yes.
yes,
Yes,
which is good.
that's right.
So for our treasurer and superintendent, those are completed for the last school year.
So now the next thing is we need to evaluate ourselves. I think that's something which we talked about.
Yep.
Right.
Something
Yeah.
new. I think we can, I think we really need to do that probably at the end of the year, maybe. That's kind of a good time.
A good time.
But we have a framework that we can start
Yep.
with now.
Yep. So I will start working on that.
We had a great update from Reaching Heights,
Yes.
who we sit on their board today. Thank you. Any other committee reports?
I was going to mention the CTE advocacy group, but you already did. So there was a meeting in July after the announcement of Brad Callender's resignation, and then there was a meeting last week that was also very, very productive. So it's good.
I neglected to include you, and you're on the committee.
It's
Sorry.
okay. It's okay.
Unfinished business?
I'm sure there's lots of unfinished business, right? That's why we're
I
here.
hope so. Otherwise, we're out of a job.
So, new business?
Friday. We're recording. Want to mention Friday? We're going Friday.
What are we doing on Friday? We're talking fast.
Oh, do we want to Columbus?
No.
Yeah, we want to mention that.
Several of us are going to a workshop at the Ohio School Board Association to discuss best practices on working with our labor force. So I'm anxious to see how that all plays out. I mean, we're essentially a young board that has been involved in lots of things like union negotiations. Some of this is new to us. Not Dr. Dixon and Scott, of course, but I mean, I think we need to just educate ourselves in, best practices. So that's one of the things that three of us are doing. Correspondences and announcements? If there's really no correspondences and
hearing-
announcements, we should probably just strike that as an ongoing
You know,
agenda.
the minute you strike it.
Right, then the emails will flood in.
Right.
I've been hearing a lot of positive feedback about the heat closings, is what I'm calling them now. Because last week there was a fair amount of concern being expressed, and this week it's like, okay, thank you.
Yep.
And then, of course, the question is always, what do those children do? If they don't have air conditioning at home, they should go to the library. The library is air conditioned. And the library is always welcoming our children, so. And then the others were bicycling up and down Lee Road today, I noticed. So there were a lot of kids out on their bikes, because what else are you gonna do?
It's enjoying the heat.
Yeah, right. They didn't have shirts on, so that's okay.
I think in University Heights, they were at Target today.
They were at Target,
That's what
well,
I
that's
hear.
air conditioned.
That's what I
Yeah,
hear.
there you
They
go,
were
right.
hanging out at Target today.
I have heard from community members of what a good opening it has been for the middle school. I've heard that from a number of people, and so that's worth mentioning as well.
Great.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I second.
Call the roll, please. Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Posh? Yes. Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Serene?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.